Jay, I want to start with Jayden Daniels, who in his second ever loss at quarterback, if we're playing that game, I thought acquitted himself really, really well yesterday. He was mostly kept in the pocket. They weren't able to run the ball. He had to do more with his arm. And it seemed to me like he passed the test. But you've watched the film, you've studied the performance. What did you think of Daniels?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he played well. Obviously they didn't get the win, but he did have no running game to help him out a lot. They played from behind, which, if you had a concern or something he hasn't really done yet is play from behind. They got beat pretty good by Tampa week 1, but they played with the lead the last 4 in their win streak and hadn't had to play from behind against a pretty good defense from Baltimore front anyway. And he did good. Baltimore scored to go up 14. Jayden took him right down to cut it to 7. Baltimore went down, kicked a field goal, make it 10. He took him down, kicked a field goal, make it 7. So I thought he was competitive. He was accurate. Missed a couple throws, but for the most part, I thought he did good.
Yeah, the ones that he missed, if you remember off the top of your head, Jay, go into those where what did you see? What did he see? And kind of what were some of the ones where you went, oh, he probably wants that one back?
Yeah, the one on third down, he was trying to make a play, and he just overthrew Dominique Brown, or it bounced off the safety's face. It was almost intercepted. That one just sailed on him. He's throwing on the move. That's a tough throw against your body, against the grain, and trying to throw a guy across the field. That's one you probably wouldn't throw if it was first down, but since it was third down or trailing, he probably just tried to force it. Then he missed a couple other ones, which, he had a couple balls batted down, but nothing is really fundamentally wrong with him. He's an accurate passer. He's 24 for 35, for God's sakes, and played pretty well.
It seemed to me like the Ravens did a better job keeping him in the pocket. I noticed in house a couple of times where they had Roquan Smith legit spy him on some third downs. I don't know how often they did that over the course of the whole game, but what was their plan? Because it did seem to work in terms of mitigating him as a runner. He had 3 design runs for all of 3 yards, and then otherwise had 3 scrambles for a total of 19.
Yeah, they did a good job keeping him in the pocket, like you mentioned. And the most important thing was stopping the run game, which, without Brian Robinson Jr., I think that had a little bit of an impact because you don't want to overload Austin Eckler and give him the ball 25 times a game. Baltimore came into the game holding teams under 60 yards rushing the game, so we knew that was going to be an issue. But for the most part, I think Baltimore's plan is play the way they normally play. They get their safeties involved. They have 2 very good safeties, and they got them. Hamilton was involved in a lot of the run support issues, and then in the passing game, keep them in the pocket and play good tight man coverage, get on the receivers. And that's probably the only issue offensively right now you're concerned about, somebody outside of Terry getting some separation on a consistent basis when you're playing against a good defense with a formidable pass rush.
Yeah, Jay, you mentioned not having Brian Robinson. What's the real tangible effect in terms of what Kingsbury can call and maybe what it might do to a defense to not have to worry about Robinson?
Yeah, I think some of his inside zones he's probably more unlikely to call. They still call a couple of them, but they have a couple of good run concepts. They did a couple of good zone read concepts that I liked, where Jayden could have kept one of them. Might have been a dang 40-yard gain, but for the most part, I just think sticking with the run like they had in their 4-game winning streak. They did such a good job against the Giants and Cincinnati and Arizona and Cleveland. I just think he probably got away from it a little bit more and went to the passing game for a couple of reasons. One, they didn't have Brian, and 2, they were behind a little bit and felt like they had to match score for score with Baltimore.
Yeah, I think chasing the game probably a factor in that, as Jay points out as well. Jay Gruden, former head coach here in D.C., on Grant and Danny. I wanted to ask you about the lack of, forget commitment, even attempt to run. And I'm not complaining as much as observing. I'd always prefer to make the short passing work as the running game. But, that has been the MO this year. And I know they didn't have B-Rob. Early on, Eckler ends up 9 for 21. 2 of his first 3 or so carries were downhill at a gun for 5 or 6 yards. It's not like they got nothing in the early going, but they didn't really try to, I didn't think. I was interested in why that was. Yeah. I mean, what do you think led to that in terms of what Baltimore was giving them?
I think it could have been game planning because Baltimore had played, pretty good run defense. They stuffed Dallas's running game for the most part. Buffalo couldn't get a yard with Cook, and Cincinnati, they kind of threw the ball all over the yard. When you see Cincinnati, obviously they have Joe Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They threw the ball all over the yard going into the game. Hey, we can throw the ball against these corners. We got to get after these corners, and I think that's the game plan for most teams facing the Ravens. The Ravens right now, if they have a weakness on their team, it's their back end, their corners. And I think they just felt like they got the matchups they wanted with the corners. Let's not try to run at Roquan on this big defensive line. Let's try to get after the corners. That's the weakness of their defense, and I have no problem with that.
Jay, big picture here for Washington. And this offseason, by the way, they're way better than I thought they would be, just kind of coming into this thing. So I was wrong, front office was right, et cetera. But in a game like that, it felt to me like they maybe could have used one more good playmaker at the receiver spot opposite McLaurin. I know some stuff was schemed up, and Zacchaeus dropped one of those passes. I think it was a third down pass, might have been a first down. But it felt to me like they could have used one more like stud on the opposite side so that Baltimore, might have to pay a little bit. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was my concern about the offense coming into this year was somebody else other than Terry that can do some serious damage. And in their 4-game winning streak, they had different guys step up, and Jayden was spreading the ball around to different guys. Yami Brown had some plays. Noah Brown had some plays. Zacchaeus made some plays. But I just feel like when it comes push and shove, if Terry is getting guarded by the best corner in the league, there's some good corners out there that he's going to have to face. If he gets shut down a little bit, somebody else has to step up, and I'm still not confident in one of those other guys stepping up. Maybe it's going to be Zach Ertz through the tight end. Maybe it's Austin Eckler through the backfield. So they have different ways to do it, but I am a little bit concerned with the other receivers.
Jay Gruden on Grant and Danny every Monday at 5 o'clock to break down the Commanders game. The unfortunate news today for Washington, it's not like they've got a lot of wiggle room defensively with personnel because it's been a bad defensive year as it is. John Allen has been lost for the season, it sounds like. He's going to get another opinion, but the fear is he tore his pec and he is done for the year. How damaging is that? And what are they going to have to do to overcome not having one of their better players on defense?
It's damaging because of the rotations, and Jonathan has been coming out. They've had a really good rotation on their front, keeping those guys fresh. Now all of a sudden your backup is your starter. Now who's going to be the backup for that guy's rotation? That's where the issue comes in. Depth is critical on the defensive line. You love to have Allen Payne play most of the time, but they get tired, so they have to come out. When Derrick Henry's pounding the ball, those guys are running the ball, and they're out on the field a long time. You got to have a great rotation, and when you lose a guy, it damages your rotation.
Jay, you were here, obviously, and there were times where the defense wasn't maybe as strong as the offense. I think that might be fair to say, right? You went through that?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I would say so too. What do you tell the defensive coaches in these kinds where it's obvious that it's personnel and it's maybe it's science
different when you are the defensive coach in Dan Quinn's case.
But I guess the sort of the question is philosophically, what would it be like to me? And I want your take, and then I just kind of want what kind of conversations you'd had with the defensive minds. But I would go, just try to turn them over. You can't stop them anyway. The sooner we get the ball back, the sooner I can get back to work. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with this defense and how much fun this offense is. But what kind of convos would you have with the defensive staff when they were nowhere near pulling their weight?
Well, you got to do a good job of scheming up some stuff, and then you got to have great effort. You got to out-effort them every week, and I think that's where Dan Quinn's coming from. He expects extreme effort, and if he doesn't get extreme effort with that group, they're going to get crushed. But if they play hard, like you say, you can get a couple hands on the ball, maybe force some turnovers. They did hold Baltimore 3 field goals and a punt and got a pick, so they had 5 stops technically, if you count field goals as a stop. So they did some decent things on defense, but you're right, they are outmanned. So when you are outmanned, you got to play with great energy, and then you have to have some schematic blitzes that get home and try to get some sacks.
It felt to me like in the first half they said, we will not let Derrick Henry get going. And he ran the ball 9 times for 38 yards with like a 12. And they did a really good job on him. But Zay Flowers went for a career day in one half. I mean, at halftime, Zay Flowers had 9 targets, 9 catches, 132. And then in the second half, they pretty much said, okay, we can't let Zay Flowers do that. He didn't get another catch. But then Derrick Henry went 15 for 94. So I don't know what the answer is, but in that situation where a team kind of loads up, you beat them over the top, then they play a little better in the back end, you just take what's there and you run the ball. Like what could they have done? What was the adjustment that maybe you look at and you go, man, I wish Joe Witt would have tried this?
Well, they've put 28 on Dallas, 35 on Buffalo, 41 on Cincinnati. So these are good coaches as well. McDermott's a good coach at Buffalo, and obviously Cincinnati's coordinator is good. Dallas, Zimmer. I mean, so they're doing it to everybody. And if you really flip the coin, I think eventually Washington is going to give people the same problems. You load up the box to stop the run and make sure you get an extra guy in there for Jayden's ability to run. And when you get B-Rob back, now you're going to have McLaurin one-on-one all over the place. And that's what happened for Baltimore. I mean, a ton of single safety for Coach Quinn there in the first half. And Baltimore took advantage of it. They were running in-breaking routes, crossing routes. Then they got Andrews involved. Bateman got involved in the second half. Likely had a big catch. So it's pick your poison. What do you want to call? Do you want to play a light box to stop the passing game, make sure Zay Flowers doesn't hurt you? Then all of a sudden Derrick Henry and Lamar just torturing you. Or do you want to play a loaded box and try to get some extra people in there to stop Lamar, and then you leave your corners in jeopardy? So it's pick your poison. Nobody's been able to figure it out yet, but eventually I think the Commanders give people the same type of issue. You want to load the box up and stop Washington's run game and leave, Terry McLaurin out there, or do you want to have hands on Terry and let Eckler and B-Rob kick your ass?
Jay Gruden with us here on G&D. So as a play caller, knowing that they've got a pretty good recipe where they've been moving the football, this week's point total not the same, but I still think you wouldn't say the offense was a failure by any stretch. How much of this again is this is what we do well and let's see if it works the next week versus I've got some new wrinkles I can kind of add in? What's that balance, Jay? Someone that's calling plays and designing offense.
Well, I think you do what you do. You got to make sure you stick with what your identity is. And through the first 5-6 weeks, I think Washington, they're actually a run-first team. And then that opens up the play-action pass huge for Jayden and his ability to run. And then obviously the drop-back game will come with it. So you'll add some more wrinkles depending on the coverage you're playing at Carolina. You'll see Carolina tape. You'll see what Atlanta did. Maybe come up with an idea or two and try to throw them in there. But you got to still realize Jayden's young. You want to overload his plate. You want to make sure he's very comfortable with whatever plays you put in. You rep the hell out of him, but you still want to make sure you're repping the things that you've been good at.
One of the things we've been talking about on the show today within the last hour is how aggressively should they try to fix some of their flaws in season. What do you think they should do? This was supposed to have been a building year, but they're obviously ahead of schedule, and they've got an outstanding chance to win the NFC East. Should they try to go get a corner, ahead of the Halloween deadline, or a pass rusher, or whatever they feel like could put them in a much better spot? Or should they just play this thing out, part of the course, stay ahead of schedule, and wait till the offseason and get uber aggressive?
I'm on the phone right now trying to find another corner, maybe another defensive lineman, especially now that Jonathan's out for the year. You got to add to the depth, so they're going to have to add somebody. Whether or not they can get somebody via trade or not, I do not know, but I would definitely be on the phone and checking out every opportunity I could to upgrade my depth on the defensive line, get another possible cover corner in there. Because if you don't, then you're going to have to play cover twos and all that stuff. Then you're going to put your defensive front in jeopardy, and they're not good enough up front to stop. So they got to do something. Hopefully they can. But if not, if they want to go with the guys they got, like I said before, they got to play with great effort. And like Danny said, we got to figure out ways to get turnovers.
What would one good player I don't think would fix everything here on this defense, right? I mean, it's not as if a Micah Parsons or I don't know, Myles Garrett's available, presumably, right, to transform everything. An upgrade at one spot, would that do the trick here, Jay? To me, there are a few different changes that have to make a way, right?
Yeah, there's a couple. We need another defensive end to get some pressure and play the run a little bit better, and obviously probably another linebacker for some depth back there, and obviously corner and maybe a safety. So, yeah, they're playing their ass off, man. You got to give them a hell of a lot of credit. Coach Quinn does a great job coaching the scheme, but also coaching effort, and people buy in. So that's half the battle right there. The other half, we got to get some players in here and upgrade a couple spots.
All right, let's go around the horn. Some other NFL things with Jay Gruden. Joins us every Monday right here at 5 o'clock. Some of the other big storylines and games in the National Football League. You told us Caleb Williams would be just fine. You didn't like some of how Shane Waldron was running that offense. It seems like something's clicking. They've gotten their acts together. They've won 3 in a row. Williams has played very well. A career-high 4 touchdown passes against the Jaguars as they hung 35 in London. What'd you make of his game?
He's doing a lot better. He's making plays within the pocket. He's not moving around. His feet are calming down just a little bit. That's going to get better and better the more confident he feels in the scheme and what they're trying to do and what defenses are trying to attack where. So, yeah, he's been impressive. His ability to get better and better throughout the season so far has been good. He's got to keep it up, though. The NFC North is really, really good. I mean, I think it's the best division of football. And Chicago's 4-2, Green Bay's 4-2, Detroit's 4-1, and Minnesota's 5-0. So I got a tough test coming up every week, and he's just going to continue to get better and stay the course.
Would you make a Dallas getting absolutely destroyed in a non-competitive fashion at home to a good Detroit team?
They just got smashed in the mouth, and it's been a recurring deal. New Orleans did the same thing. Green Bay did the same thing to them in the playoff game. They can't stop the run. They're not physical enough up front. You think Washington has problems up front? Go look at Detroit or Dallas's roster. They have little linebackers and little defensive linemen, and they're just getting bludgeoned to death. And it's a problem. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They're first and second down, 2nd and 2 every play. They're never in 3rd down, which is what Zimmer's specialty is 3rd down blitz package, but he can't get to it because they're always behind or they're always in 1st and 10.
What'd you make of Drake Maye's debut for the New England Patriots? They got beat pretty good by the Texans.
Yeah, he made a couple good throws, which you like to see. Just want to have something coming out of the game, say, all right, we got somebody here. We got something to work with. And I think he did that. He is a little wild. He's a little erratic with his accuracy from time to time, but the competitiveness and how we play the game, how we manage the game, breaking the huddle, snap count, making a couple key throws in key situations was something to build on. I think he'll get better and better, but it'll take some time for him to show the progress that Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams have shown so far in the first couple of weeks.
So it might be a little bit touchy here, but there's a situation in Cleveland, Jay, where there's a lot of money being paid to the quarterback, and somebody wants him to play. He's terrible. They're bad because of it. What would you do as the head coach in this situation? How do you handle that when it seems like maybe there's an edict from on high? Nobody said anything, but man, is it ugly and awkward, and that roster's not that terrible. They're not as bad as their record is, except they are because the quarterback stinks, not giving them a chance every week. How would you handle it? What would you do?
Yeah, their quarterback's bad. Their offensive line isn't very good either. They have issues. The receiving core, other than Amari Cooper's not very good. And Joku's finally back and doing some different things. But yeah, you're right. I think at some point you're 1-5, for God's sake. Something's got to change. They got to make a change at a critical position, and players can see it. They can see the film. He's missing throws and he's running into sacks and he's struggling mightily. And I think they got to take a look at Jameis Winston at least for a game and see how he does. Maybe go back to Watson later, but you got to give Winston a chance to turn a season around because they're losing it quickly and they're losing the players. They're losing the locker room because of it.
How'd the Bucs hang 50 on the Saints? Looks like 4 tutties from Baker Mayfield. That game was on while I was in Baltimore for Washington and the Ravens, but it seemed like they got up by 1 million. Then the Saints came back and took the lead. Then the Bucs still won by 1 million. What a weird game.
It was weird. I was watching that quite closely. It was right next to the Raven game and the Commander game, and it was a crazy game. New Orleans got a punt return, and they got 3 picks in the first half, I believe it was, and took the lead. And then some of the worst tackling I've ever seen in NFL history. They threw a little dump off to the running back. He ran for a 50-yard touchdown. They threw a little dump off check down to Gatto, and he broke 6 tackles for a touchdown. It was absolutely horrific. If you're a defensive coach or a player on defense, it is going to be a tough Monday for you when you watch that tape.
Falcons rolled over the Panthers, Washington's opponent next week. What have you seen from Atlanta so far? It was a weird start, but you look up, they're 4-2 right there with Tampa in that division, and Carolina looks like they regressed to the mean a little bit, huh?
Yeah. Carolina just undermanned quite a bit. They have a lot of holes right now, defensively, offensively. Andy's trying to do as best he can, but they just can't overcome a horrific defense, and they're not good. Atlanta's tough. You add a quarterback like Kirk to a team with some good weapons. They have 2 outstanding backs. I mean, everybody talks about Bijan, but this Algier guy is a monster, and they're running the football very well. Which, when you can run the ball and you got Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, look out, because he is the master of the play action game, and they're a good football team, and their defense is getting better.
Steelers Raiders was pretty lopsided. Pittsburgh's 4-2. Justin Fields was meh as a passer, but made enough plays running the ball, and they were dominant defensively. What would you do if you're Mike Tomlin at quarterback? You've won 2/3 of your game, so I guess maybe you just roll with Fields, but Wilson's healthy. What's your thought there?
Yeah, I'd roll with them. They're 4-2. So yeah, I have to roll with them. You keep them ready, keep Russell ready if something happens to Fields. Fields is a younger player, and he does the same things as Russell, really, except he's more athletic. So I don't really see the upside in playing Russell Wilson other than his experience. But his last 2 or 3 years that he's played, the last year he played at Seattle and the last 2 at Denver, it wasn't very good. Now, it's not like we're putting in a guy that was coming off a Super Bowl loss in Seattle or win in Seattle. It's not the same guy, in my opinion. So I would roll with Fields right now. And if he turns the ball over and puts their team at risk because of his turnovers, then I'd go to Russell. But right now, Fields is playing pretty good.
Similar situation, I guess different enough, though, in Indy, right, where they drafted a project. Anthony Richardson is a project. He was raw. Everyone kind of knew that. But right now, this minute, I know he's been hurt a little bit, so he's missed some time, so it's made the decision easier. But they're better right now with Flacco than they would be with Richardson. But the ceiling long term with Richardson, some would argue, is higher, or at least worth experimenting with. How would you handle that as a coach, where obviously those guys don't care about 5 years from now, 3 years from now? They want to win right now. And maybe as a coach, that's what you feel like too. How would you handle that situation?
Production matters, and they weren't producing that much with Anthony as a starter, and he's young. He's going to get better. But when you put in a veteran guy like Flacco, and he's getting the ball to Pittman, he's getting the ball to Downs. They got a decent running game. I don't know if Taylor got hurt, but he's still hurt. But they got Sermon. He's doing okay. But you got to play with a hot hand. And then Richardson, this is a great learning experience. He's young. He only had 4 starts last year. Mm-hmm. He only played 1 year at Florida. He needs time to develop. He needs time in the cooker. So this is a great chance for him to learn from Flacco. Now, when he does come back healthy, maybe you have a package of plays for him to get him in the game for a series or so, and do some of the quarterback design stuff and play action things that he's really good at. But for the meantime, you got to ride the hot hand, because you're right back in a division race in the NFC South.
Jay, we'll let you out on this one here. Bills, Jets, Monday Night Football, first place game. Jets debuting a brand new coaching staff with a head coach in Jeff Ulbrich, and they've elevated now as a defensive coordinating role as well. So how do you see Bills, Jets going tonight?
This is going to be a weird one to watch. You never know how a new coordinator, you can't change the whole offense in a week, that's for sure. So let me have a lot of similar concepts, but mainly it's going to be Aaron Rodgers' show. He's going to have a lot of input in the offense and what he likes. He's going to try to get the ball to Garrett Wilson as much as he can, but Buffalo doesn't give up a lot of big plays defensively. I think it's going to be a tight game. It's going to be a lot of runs, a low-scoring game, and then the team that doesn't turn the ball over will win. And I think Josh Allen will probably make some plays with his legs. Will prove the difference.
Jay, thank you as always, man. Talk to you next week.
You got it. Thank you, guys.